Hello everyone, and welcome to the final film fight of Tim Rex Season 1. So far since June, there's kind of been a theme of superhero movies, and even more specifically, Marvel vs. DC. The first video I ever made was Dawn of Justice v Civil War in June. Then later in September came Captain America v Wonder Woman. Now in the end comes the greatest clash between the two, the Avengers v Justice League. This has been what the DC Extended Universe has been building up to for 4 years, while Marvel already had this all set up and raking in cash over 5 years now. Seriously though, the Avengers has grossed more cash on opening weekend than any other movie ever. And the second film in this category is unsurprisingly its sequel, Age of Ultron. Justice League, however, hasn't been performing as well, making less than $100 million on opening weekend. Don't worry, it happens to a lot of movies. But money doesn't matter. Bad movies make buttloads of money all the time, and plenty of good ones haven't made the cash they deserved. So far, DC has lost both previous film fights. The first Avenger is better than Wonder Woman, and Civil War demolished Dawn of Justice. But will there be a comeback? Has DC learned from its past mistakes? And will the MCU stay untouchable? Let's take a look. What should make both films seem so cool is the opportunity of getting to see some of your favorite characters come together in one movie filled to the brim with awesomeness. It really is the characters and their interactions that will make or break both of them. So how does the Avengers do? Well, pretty spectacularly. The characters and their interactions were really well handled. We see different personalities click, while others clash, so it's fun to watch how they work with one another. There are so many good examples of this. Tony Stark, an intelligent, filthy rich, egotistical man-child, immediately connects to Bruce Banner, who's also a man of science. The two bounce off each other really well and have a great bromance. And their relationship is especially compelling because Bruce is all about control, while Stark is all about letting loose. Of course, Banner has mastered self-control because we all know what happens when he loses it, but Stark loves thrill-seeking and being unhinged, so he's fascinated by the Hulk and even encourages Bruce to let it out. It's really clever what they did there. Also, it's inevitable that Stark and Steve's personalities come to conflict, because being from the 40s, Steve Rogers is all old-fashioned, polite, and all-around well-natured, as Stark is wild and eccentric. This doesn't cause the Civil War later on, but the conflict certainly works as a hint of what's to come, and I don't think any fan missed it. Then there's the relationship between Banner and Romanoff. Nothing like their relationship in the sequel, but I mean the correlation between the two. They both seem like nice, level-headed people, but they both carry monsters inside them. Obviously Banner does, but Natasha is very regretful of her past and carries all the weight of who she was before joining S.H.I.E.L.D. And it's very interesting how she's the most afraid of the Hulk. Not too sure what exactly they're trying to say there. Maybe Banner losing control to his inner monster shows that she can too. Perhaps she just saw Ang Lee's Hulk and hated it. Make of that what you will. And then there are smaller things like Cap bragging about understanding more 21st century Earthspeak than Thor, and his reaction to Romanoff calling Thor a god, being one of the MCU's most quotable lines ever.
I'd sit this one out, Cap.
I don't see how I can.
These guys come from legend. They're basically gods.
There's only one god, ma'am. And I'm pretty sure he doesn't dress like that.
Also, on a different note, the casting for the MCU has been so spot on. Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury, Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, Mark Ruffalo and Edward Norton were both great as the Hulk, Chris Evans as Captain America, the list goes on. Basically everyone was perfectly casted. There is one shortcoming with the characters though. That shortcoming would be named Hawkeye. Clint Barton only gets a short cameo in Thor and about 5 seconds of screen time before being possessed by Loki in the Avengers. So we don't ever get to see the real Clint until the end of the film's second act, and by then it's too late to really establish him. As a result, we don't get to know him until Age of Ultron, where he basically steals the show. So I just wish we got to see more of him here. Every Avenger gained millions of more fans from this movie, except Hawkeye, who gets left out. All in all, I'm very happy with the characters in the Avengers. It's everything any fan could ever want in this historical crossover. Well, unless they're a huge Hawkeye fan, but oh well. As for Justice League, the story's a bit different. You see, half the characters haven't been established previously, so we have to be introduced to them in this movie. That's 3 main characters' origins that we have to get through, and it's a little much. Some of the characters like Aquaman and his home of Atlantis are left very underdeveloped. Literally, the villain Steppenwolf comes to Atlantis and beats up all the guards of the Mother Box. Don't worry, I'll get to him later. And it feels so empty because we've never seen Atlantis or Atlanteans before this point. And even though we've seen Batman before, his character still wasn't very well established. That's more of a problem with Dawn of Justice, but it comes back around here. So that's a 4th character we need to be truly introduced to. And speaking of Dawn of Justice, it feels like Justice League is trying to rewrite the past. What do I mean by that? Well, Superman is far from the same Superman we saw before, and the movie plays it off like he's always been this way in the series. He's more of the classic Boy Scout hero, kind of like the Christopher Reeves one, which is great, but before he was always brooding and unsure of himself. In Justice League though, he's smiling and laughing and being all fun, which is great, but head scratching at the same time. It would have been a cool arc for him, starting moody and dark, but growing into the Superman we all know and love. But no, the film just tries to pass this off as how he's always been. The same guy who's lifting citizens away from the climactic battle is supposedly the same one who brought the destructive battle with Zod into the middle of Metropolis and leveled buildings full of innocents. And the way Superman is brought back is really weird too. At first, he's crazy and throwing around the other members, sees Lois Lane, flies her to Kansas, and then is immediately better and is an entirely different Superman as he lands. Like, what? There's no process for becoming mentally stable. It's just on and off like a switch. Okay, enough about Superman. As for Batman, I really don't like how he's portrayed here. Batman, who should be the, if not one of the most crucial League members, is reduced to basically being the crew's wallet. Yeah, he's a billionaire, but that's all the film seems to remember about him.
What are your superpowers again? I'm rich.
In a fight though, he's completely useless. In one scene, Batman barely takes on one enemy, while the rest of the team is fighting Steppenwolf and mobs of enemies. Did Justice League forget how awesome Batman is? He's mastered over 100 forms of martial arts, is a literal genius, and is the world's greatest detective. But nah, forget all that. He's just gonna pay for all the stuff and drive around. And again, we don't really know who he is. What does he think of killing? How has that policy changed over time? How did Robin's death affect him? And why is he so willing to create a crazy, murderous Superman if that's the very thing he's feared for years? Ezra Miller's Barry Allen really rides that fine line between funny and annoying. He gets a lot of unfunny dialogue, like about his hatred of brunch, but overall I enjoyed his presence in the film. He brings some much needed lightheartedness to the series, and certainly has his actually funny moments. The worst one in my opinion though is Aquaman. Watching him on screen feels like I'm losing brain cells. He acts so over the top, and tries so hard to be dark and edgy. It's like an Aquaman parody, but the movie didn't realize it. He's so unintentionally funny when he's trying to be all serious, and it's never used to make fun of him in any way. Justice League actually tries to play this emo Maui straight. At any moment, I was expecting him to bust out with the heavy metal cover of You're Welcome. The rest of them were alright. Wonder Woman is still the best to watch on screen for obvious reasons, and Cyborg I also found unintentionally funny. The casting is also spot on for Justice League 2, but I wish they did more with the talent they had here, like J.K. Simmons. He's one of my favorite actors to watch on screen, and one of the biggest actors in this movie, and he's only reduced to 2 short scenes where he really doesn't get to do anything. He doesn't get to yell at anyone or roast anyone. That's the whole J.K. Simmons thing. And Ben Affleck, being a gritty, darker, older, grizzled Batman, doesn't really sell that. He seems kind of average. We don't get that sense that he's been through so much, and that he's deteriorating. Justice League likes to do a lot of name dropping. Not just how it name drops Darkseid, but a few times good character ideas are mentioned once, but not developed enough to be compelling in any way. Like when Bruce Wayne says about Superman, he was more human than I ever was. That sounds great, but where does it come from and where does it go? Superman was just as awful, if not worse than Batman in Dawn of Justice and Man of Steel. And we get to see some of Bruce Wayne's humanity when he comforts a little girl during the chaos that Superman created. Similarly with Diana, She says how she's too afraid to be a leader because she didn't want to lead any more men to their death like Steve Trevor in World War I. After her initial confrontation about this with Bruce, no one else presses her on this. She doesn't even reflect on all the tragedies that she let happen. Come on, Diana let Hitler come to power and kill millions. Same with Stalin, Mao, Hirohito, Kim Il-sung, and the horrors of decolonization. She just completely forgot all of that. Yeah, in the end, she tries to become more of a leader, but everyone seems to forget that she let the Holocaust happen. Her arc comes and goes so fast, it might as well not even be there. I'd say the characters are better in the Avengers. They're all more likable and entertaining to watch whenever they're fighting or having a discussion. They bounce off each other really well. In Justice League, the only one I feel we really know is Wonder Woman. Everyone else is either being introduced, reintroduced, and sometimes I don't like who they are once I do know them. Come on, like really Aquaman, you litter glass in your own ocean? No wonder why sea creatures have been going extinct. As for all the character interactions, well, they're kind of there. There's not much time for it because already so much time has been devoted to establishing multiple characters, but there are some noteworthy moments. Flash mentions to Cyborg how they're both the accidents. Yeah, you and millions of Americans. And Batman and Wonder Woman briefly discuss how they've been around much longer than Superman, yet weren't able to inspire people the same way. This I find contradictory to Dawn of Justice in so many ways, but what else is new? Bruce feels guilty about trying to kill Superman, even though he shouldn't, and that's about it. But again, it all just feels name-dropped. None of it amounts to anything really, and just comes in a line or two. All the Avengers are fun, likable, and consistent, so I'm not questioning any character decisions or personalities. The Avengers wins this round. The stories in both films are pretty straightforward and simple. Justice League is about Steppenwolf invading Earth with an army of giant bugs that kinda look like Geonosians from Attack of the Clones. I should take off points for reminding me of that travesty, but I'll spare this movie. In order to take over Earth and terraform it, he needs to find 3 mother boxes and have them touch. And so the Justice League is united to stop Steppenwolf from touching the boxes.
I couldn't afford a present this year, so I got you this box.
That's what I got you!
It's simple in premise, but awkwardly structured. The first half hour or so is introducing the new members, and feels like a getting the band back together movie, like that really good Phineas and Ferb episode, but with Batman, but actually more on par with Country Bears. Then during the second act is all the Superman stuff that's entertaining when he's wrecking them all, but also very awkwardly structured as I mentioned before. There's also this subplot about a family in Russia where Steppenwolf begins to connect the boxes, and the film keeps cutting to them like they're so important. We see other people, and presumably families in the area, yet this is the only one ever shown. It's dumb, we don't need to keep focusing on these people. Even when they're not relevant to the plot currently, the film still cuts away to them for some reason. They have no real impact on the story, any more than any other family. Maybe the filmmakers wanted to save money on extras, I don't really know. And like I said before, name dropping good ideas. There's one piece of the story that I wish got more time to play out and sink in. The whole Superman turning evil bit. I would love a movie, or large piece of one, dedicated to that. An Injustice movie would be amazing. Well, with this creative talent, probably not. The story of the Avengers is very similar, yet handled far more intelligently. We have the villain Loki leading the Chitauri army given to him by Thanos in return for the Tesseract, which yields immense power, as we've seen before. There's still a magical MacGuffin box that the villain wants. A lot of the story also consists of trying to bring the Avengers together to work as a team against Loki and save the world. It's a question of whether or not Fury can get all these larger-than-life icons to work together as part of a greater whole, despite what Loki and the heads of S.H.I.E.L.D. believe. Similarly to the movie itself, a film with so many main characters would surely just end up as a fight for screen time and not work coherently, according to the naysayers. A major and valid fear was that the Avengers would just end up as Iron Man 3, because of how immensely popular he became. But of course the Avengers do assemble, save the world, prove the doubters wrong, and the rest is history. So it's like a meta-narrative. And I also like some of the twists and turns the movie takes, like the Hulk losing control and having Thor to put him down, and how Agent Coulson's death is what Fury decides to use to give them that final push to unite. So of course, I enjoyed the Avengers story more. Honestly, I'm not a huge fan of Loki as the villain in the Avengers. I think he made a better villain in Thor, but Tom Hiddleston does still give a very lively performance. I can definitely see what Taylor Swift saw in this guy. Loki perhaps isn't the ideal villain for the Avengers though. I know they didn't have the rights, but Carnage would be an awesome villain. Just throwing that out there. So again, Loki wants to take over the world with the help of the Chitauri and prove himself to Thor and Odin. To prevent the Avengers from assembling, he tries to tear them apart with long speeches and get the Hulk to lose control on the helicarrier, which he does. Temporarily, Loki succeeds, but it's kind of difficult to imagine how. It's one of those things where he must have read the script already, because if this is his plan to create infighting, how could he have known so many things would happen? How would he know that Cap and Stark wouldn't get along? How'd he know that Stark would find out about S.H.I.E.L.D. making weapons with the Tesseract? How'd he know that the Hulk would even be with them and lose control? Maybe he just makes everything up on the fly, but we know he's not that smart. Either way, I think he's alright. The Avengers does a whole army of bad guys thing that I keep complaining about, but they're cool enough baddies to fight, and a nuke is coming to kill everyone, so it doesn't become tasteless and bland. Steppenwolf in Justice League is meh. I shouldn't even talk about him because he's so bland and boring and generic. Same with his design and animation. He looks like a Draugr from Skyrim. I can get behind a villain who wants to destroy the world, but at the very least, give him some personality. Make him interesting to watch on screen, like Loki and Ultron. Steppenwolf is just a big CGI figure of nothingness who occasionally shouts out cliche villain lines. Oh, you can't win, you can't stop me, kind of stuff. Justice League has more of a blank space here than Taylor Swift. Man, I'm laying the Tay-Tay jokes on thick today. And I mean thick with the CK, not CC. Taylor's definitely not thick. By the way, notice how I have more to say about her than Steppenwolf? Yeah, that should tell you something. He's the most disposable villain I've ever seen in a comic book movie. He's probably just a precursor to Darkseid later on, but if this is the villain in the movie, then I have to judge the villain in the movie. Also, with less than a stellar box office reception, and getting slammed by critics, we might not even be getting the Darkseid movie anyways. Just like how The Amazing Spider-Man 2 was supposed to launch a Sinister Six movie, and spent so much time trying to world build, just to have everything cancelled, at least Loki gets a couple of good scenes and some laughs along the way. And Tom Hiddleston is entertaining to watch on screen. We're not left waiting for Thanos. Steppenwolf is just pure nothingness. In the Avengers, not only were the characters great and the story smart, but the action is off the charts. Can I just play some of the scenes? Because they'll do the film far more justice than I ever could.
Now might be a really good time for you to get angry.
That's my secret, Captain. I'm always angry.
It's just epicness flowing into your eyes. It's like the filmmakers went around asking people what matchups they'd love to see, and so they came up with Iron Man v Thor, Thor v Hulk, and Black Widow v Hawkeye. It's awesome. And the climactic battle in New York, man, it's like a giant payoff for an entire 4 years of work and setup. Man, that was so cool. Definitely worth the wait. The humor is also really funny sometimes. From small quips to large gags, a lot of it works. Like when Cap is challenging Stark to a fight and tells him to put on the Iron Man suit, but then the helicarrier gets attacked and he hastily tells him to put on the suit again. The film is riddled with funny moments like that, so The Avengers is definitely a goldmine of entertainment. Justice League, on the other hand, feels kinda empty. This is what DC has been building up to since 2013, and this is it? Justice League should feel big and grand and awesome. Literally Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and The Flash come together along with Cyborg and Aquaman, but who really cares about them? It should be epic, but this is all we got. Most of the action certainly feels like average superhero fluff, fighting this army of Geonosians and then Steppenwolf. None of it is really that interesting. It'll keep you entertained, but I can't say much more than that. The one really cool scene though is when Superman goes wild and beats everyone up. After Dawn of Justice, I just want to see everyone get whooped. Man, just give me that Injustice movie, please. So, yeah, that scene was awesome, and when Superman turns his head towards Flash, as Flash is trying to run around him, it was so funny and cool, and I wish there were more scenes like it. One thing I've gotta say is that Justice League learned from the mistakes of the past. Maybe it's just because Joss Whedon took over as director after Snyder stepped down. This one's a lot brighter and more fun than all the previous DCEU movies, with the exception of Wonder Woman. Maybe they just upped the saturation, but the costumes are much brighter and feel more flashy. And there's way more humor and levity in this one. Unlike Suicide Squad, it's actually funny. Well, on occasion. Many of the jokes didn't land for me, but some did. Not as good as Wonder Woman in this regard, but still a major step up from Snyder's other works. It's crazy. This one is actually watchable. I didn't immediately pass out from boredom. It's a Christmas miracle! Well, a Thanksgiving miracle, actually. Are those a thing? Let's just say it's a thing. So, yeah, while there are a couple of improvements over the previous movies, I still wish there was much more to the action than just the generic punching and kicking of CGI henchmen. That one short Superman scene can't carry the entire movie. Much was left to be desired, while the Avengers delivered everything you could ever hope for. Okay, do I really have to pretend this is even a contest? The Avengers! Yeah, let's not act surprised. We all should have known that Justice League wouldn't be that good, and I'd even say pretty bad. Not a total disaster like Suicide Squad and Dawn of Justice. It made a few improvements, but nothing that could make up for the empty villain, inconsistencies, annoying characters, generic action, and poor structure. So, why did the Avengers end up so much better? Simple, they put in the work. Every major superhero in the Avengers was given their own movie to set them up and show us what they're all about, what their motivations are, what their personalities are like, how they became super. So then we can just jump into the Avengers and not spend so much time setting everything up. We can just have a fun, enjoyable experience as we watch the characters we've gotten to know and love interact with one another. It does all this in a smart story about whether the Avengers can work as a coherent whole. And that applies to the team and the movie itself. It does all this while being one of the most fun summer action movies ever. So yes, you can have your shawarma and eat it too. It also helped that Marvel was truly pioneering this idea of a joint cinematic universe. They're the original. Now everyone else is trying to copy their success. Soon after came a Godzilla, Superman, Mummy, Spider-Man, each with the goal of establishing their own cinematic universe. DC was playing catch-up the entire time. Remember, Man of Steel came a year after the Avengers, so they've been 5 years trailing. Marvel started in 2008 and blew our minds with that Iron Man credit scene, while Man of Steel came in 2013. That would explain a lot of the rush to set all this up, which they couldn't even do right. Justice League was pretty much guaranteed to fail, but honestly, it could have been a lot worse when I'm looking at all the pieces falling apart. The director Zack Snyder had to leave mid-production and leave the rest up to Joss Whedon, who was coincidentally the director of The Avengers. So, two different directors with two completely different styles had to mash together a movie. Also, DC didn't put in nearly as much setup as Marvel, showing us only half of the League members and rewriting what we do know. So now the actual film is here, and they still need to introduce the other half. Imagine how jarring that would have made The Avengers, an already 2-hour and 20-minute long film, and then they have to introduce Iron Man and Captain America. Crazy. And not only did Justice League have to introduce and redo the characters, but also by studio demand, be under 2 hours long. Wow, that's nearly impossible. Why Warner Brothers wanted this? I don't really know. Maybe to fit more showtimes in the day, maybe as a response to backlash from previous films being too long and dragged out. Not sure, but if this were an autopsy, this would be the cause of death. So out of 3 Marvel vs. DC matchups, Marvel has won every time. No shock there. Well, that concludes Season 1 of Film Fights. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, to please leave a like and subscribe. See you next week.